Is America headed over a debt cliff? Chip Roy certainly thinks so. Rand Paul does have a plan for the Senate. And what can Buzz Lightyear teach us about the debt debacle? This is Steve Elliott with Brian Connor with a very, very important Grassfire live broadcast for our VIPs and others who will be listening all across the internet. Brian, again, another incredibly busy news day.
Yeah, and it's not really the happiest of days, especially for conservatives, as we saw a quote-unquote debt limit bill that, in fact, erases the debt limit for at least a year and a half, and also saw more Democrats support it in the GOP-controlled House and Republicans, and now it just moves on, and kind of like the misery continues as it moves to the Senate.
Yeah, it really does, and the Republicans. I guess McCarthy met his thresholds. He had 149, apparently wanted 150. But as you said, Brian, more Democrats supported this than Republicans. 71 Republicans voted no, which is a very, very large percentage to come against the speaker. So you had basically it's the Biden-McCarthy or the McCarthy-Biden debt deal. And Republicans had more resistance than the Democrats did, in as you said, a GOP-controlled House. And it's starting to look more and more like we are, like the Wile E. Coyote. We are careening off the cliff, and there's Congress with their tongues out, mocking and laughing at the American people as we are getting thrown off over the cliff. America is literally going over a debt cliff right now. And as you said, Brian, there's, as we've talked about, there's no real cuts in this bill. We've talked about this at great length. There's no cuts in this bill. They're claiming cuts. McCarthy's big claim to fame was that this is the first time that government spending that the budget is a little bit less than the year before. Well, first of all, it's not actually a little bit less because they're using some trickery of moving money around and also baseline budgeting. So it's not actually less. And it's coming on the heels, as we've talked about, Brian, a 40% increase in government spending since 2020. 40%. Right. So average American, think about it. Has your budget increased, your family budget increased by 40% since 2020? No, likely not. In fact,
thanks to inflation, it's shrunk for a lot of people.
It's actually shrunk for a lot of people.
And also stagnant wages have meant that, they haven't gone anywhere. In fact, we've been losing money. Right. Because we're having to spend more for the things that we need and use every day.
So it very much is as if we are careening over that cliff. No real cuts. The IRS weaponization is almost and completely intact. And as we've talked about,
2%, Steve. They cut 2%.
2%
of
that.
$80 billion for the 87,000 new IRS agents.
Of it. And that these guys are claiming some kind of victory it's absolutely astounding and deeply disturbing. We did hear, thankfully, from some conservatives, Chip Roy. We've got a clip of Chip Roy speaking in the House. We can play a little bit of that, Brian, for our team.
Please.
I listened to the gentleman from Massachusetts wax on, talking about governing. Well, we don't govern, Mr. McGovern. We represent. That's what we're supposed to do anyway, is represent the people of this.
I like that. I'm going to stop right there, Brian. I really like what he just said there. And it seems like a subtle thing, but it's very profound. He said, another member of Congress said that the difficult task of governing, but you don't govern in the legislature. The executive branch governs. Right. The executive branch executes the laws. The legislatures represent the people and write the laws. I mean, it's a little thing, but it's how they think. It's the mindset of the Beltway insiders that they are governing us even as they're writing these laws.
Right. I don't need governing. I need liberty. I need freedom, and we need government to get out of the way.
Right, and we need members of Congress who actually represent us. Let's listen to a little bit more of Chip Roy.
This country, fed up with a government that is now 40% bigger since the beginning of COVID, a government barreling towards $36 trillion of debt, and an absolute devastating burden on the future of this country, on our children and our grandchildren, who are not going to be able to afford homes, not be able to afford to go to school, not be able to afford food, groceries, talk about food programs. I don't hear a whole hell of a lot about what we're doing to devastate American families with rampant inflation because we keep spending money we don't have. To my colleagues on this side of the aisle, my beef isn't that I don't understand the struggle with the negotiators against that kind of reasoning. My beef is that you cut a deal that shouldn't have been cut.
I mean, we could listen to the whole clip, Brian, but it's right there. You cut a deal.
I laugh. Sorry, I laugh because we're not the ones who need to listen to it.
Right.
You know what I mean? We heard it and we believe it. And it's like he's just standing there talking to the wind because 149 of his colleagues voted for this thing last night. It's like, what are you doing? Everything he said, 40% growth in government, $4 trillion or more added to this already astronomical debt that we're putting at the feet of our children and grandchildren. And at this point, why not admit that it's the great grandchildren too? Because how are we supposed to come out from under this?
Well, we can't come out from under it. And then, as we've talked about, Brian, the dirty little secret of the whole thing is that there is no debt limit now. They've gone from an actual debt limit, statutory limit in the U.S. code of 31 trillion to just the last couple paragraphs of a 100-page bill says, oh, by the way, we're going to suspend the debt limit until 2025. And then after that, we'll just keep moving ahead without a debt limit until Congress.
We'll just keep paying our necessary obligations. Right. Which who knows what necessary obligation they'll incur in that time, and who knows what they're going to call necessary.
Right.
I mean, that's the big problem. One thing that Representative Chip Roy from Texas also said, which you kind of alluded to earlier in our live broadcast here, is that this is what he said. At best, we have a 2-year spending freeze that's full of loopholes and gimmicks that would allow for increased funding for the federal bureaucracy. I mean, and that's something that Grassfire has exposed from the very beginning.
Right.
And that's the warning that he's trying to give to his colleagues that, 149 of them did not listen to. It just makes you wonder, what are these people thinking?
And there is another battle that's happening right now because now the Senate's taking up the bill, and will they add amendments to it? Will anyone question this? Mike Lee is one of the leading critics of the bill, and he said basically what you just said that Chip Roy said. This is Mike Lee quote: "The supposed savings are largely, in fact, almost entirely illusory. The bill contains a mandatory 2-year caps deal for the discretionary spending, but in reality, the spending limits for the out years are unenforceable and easily waived. It's a shell game of sorts." The only edit I'd make about that is I wouldn't say of sorts, Brian. It is a manipulative shell game. It's the game. There's in theory 2 years of some levels of control, but there isn't because there is no debt limit. So there are no controls on spending actually. And then the last 8 years, there's zero statutory constraints at all. So the last 8 years where they get the great savings and all this stuff, it's all a shell game, Brian, at this point.
Yeah, it's really it's difficult to sit back and watch, to see so many, especially in the House. The American people gave the House, control of, the lower chamber, and so many of them were, they had such big talk, and they can talk the talk, but they can't walk the walk when it comes to really reining in a government that is just growing out of control. And, the saying we've heard for generations now is a government that's big enough to give you everything you want is a government big enough to take away everything you have.
Right.
And, we've been banging that drum. You have for 20 years for limited government. I've been, standing with you for the past 10, trying to get people to understand that, we are a nation that was founded on life, liberty, and limited government. And right now, we're not seeing that. I mean, to grow 40%, like you said, and like, Mr. Roy said, in just 2-3 years. I mean, it's unfathomable that this is being done to the American people without any real pushback from our, so-called leaders in Washington. You know,
Well, we know team members or Grassfire citizen team members and citizens across the country are pushing back, and we encourage you to push back. Go to Grassfire, check your email. We've got action points. In fact, we reset our fax fire to target the Senate because the Senate vote likely will happen before the end of this week as they rush this thing through. But Brian, there are some options. We've got Rand Paul actually. So that's the thing is people say, well, there's no choice. Our backs are against the wall. There's nothing we can do, right? Well, there is something we can do. Rand Paul has actually a pretty practical solution. I want to share a little bit of that, his announcement of that yesterday.
Bill reaches the Senate, I will offer a conservative alternative. My solution replaces the fake spending caps with real spending caps on total government spending. The spending caps are part of my 5-penny budget plan that balances the budget in just 5 years. My 5-penny plan creates a mandate that the federal government can't spend more than it brings in. Spending increases are forbidden from exceeding revenue forever. Our government's approach to budgeting is entirely irresponsible. No American is allowed to continue running up copious amounts of debt without consequences. At some point, the bills must be paid and spending must stop. If Congress had adopted my original penny plan in 2017, the federal budget would be balanced today. Unfortunately, they didn't have the courage.
You know, Brian, it's a matter of will. It's not a matter of ability. It's a matter of will.
Yeah.
And Rand Paul has one solution. In fact, what his proposal is, and he's going to basically force a vote on his amendment, which would replace the current dirty debt deal with his plan. And his plan is in 5 years, the budget's balanced, and we have actual spending caps and cuts that bring us to that. It's a matter of will. In fact, we've looked at the numbers, Brian. You don't even have to do as harsh of a plan as Senator Paul. If you would just go back to the 2020 levels, the budget would balance in 5 years. We've grown the government so big. The economy, fortunately, is continuing to grow. Hopefully, it will continue to grow. That if you just went back to 2020 levels in 5 years, the budget would balance anyways, which is essentially what Senator Paul is doing. So it's not a matter of see, they create this. Brian, you were bringing up the quote again, the crisis creation quote. What was that again?
It was by
Alinsky.
No. Well, it was Rahm Emanuel.
Rahm Emanuel, go ahead.
Then he was the incoming chief of staff for Barack Obama, and it was back in 2007. And he said famously, "You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. It's an opportunity to do things you think you could not do before." So that's why ever since then, the Democrats have governed by manufactured crisis. And I'd have to admit, to some degree, Republicans have done the same thing. They forced their hands to have these kind of last minute debt deals where everyone's, you look at the press today, and so there's so much love for McCarthy for this plan, for the bipartisan deal, blah, 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 to stop a disastrous default. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it's become so dramatic, it's almost sickening because it's just, there's so much that's gone into this to make it, manufacture something that makes it look worse than it is. Now, I'm not trying to minimize the default, and because, that would be bad. Shutting down the government, it's going to hurt a lot of people. But at some point, we need to get our house in order financially as a nation. And this bill, I just don't think does it. It just pushes it off, to another day.
So listen, it's time for citizens to take action. Let's not give up on the fight. You go to grassfire.com. You can see on our website, just go to key issues, or you can click on any of these updates on the dirty deal. Click on this one, for example. It's going to take you to an article. You can click right through and send your faxes. When you come to the fax page, you're going to have the opportunity to pick your level. Level 1 is a fax at GOP senators right now. We're going to get that fax to 40 senators, Republican senators. You can also chip in and help us out, help us fight this battle, or you can fax to an additional 45 Democrat senators. And these are, again, 25% off, 40% off. We're discounting these so that citizens can take action, Brian. It's very, very important. And then you'll also have an opportunity, once you fax, to use our impact portal and send messages to your members of Congress in another way, which also goes directly to them. So you can double your impact and take action right now. It's just very important, Brian, that we let our voices be heard, that we take a stand, that we continue to fight, that we say no, because, they don't care. Here's the problem. The only thing they care about is actually hearing from me. They don't listen to the polls show that almost 2/3 of Americans only want to raise the debt limit if spending is cut. That's what the polls are showing. Don't even now. What did they do? They eliminate the debt limit and they don't cut spending.
Right.
So what Americans want is an increase in debt limit only if you cut spending. That was the deal.
Right.
Surveys clearly show strong majority, 63%.
That was supposed to be the deal. That's not the deal.
Right. And that's what the American people want. If they looked, if the representatives who are supposed to be representing us actually looked at it and said, well, look, 67% of Americans want this, we'll do it. They don't do it. They don't care because it's a uniparty, Brian. It's one party in DC. That's the problem right now. And you know what? The policy wonks are going nuts. Newt Gingrich loves this because some grand strategy they're going to unfold. It's too late.
Yeah.
We're already over the cliff. We don't have time for your grand strategy in 5 years. Maybe we can turn this around. It's too late to do that.
Yeah, it's been shocking to see some of the people who have lined up behind McCarthy in this bill. And it's just, it's almost shocking. Like you mentioned, Newt Gingrich, Larry Kudlow from Fox Business, the Wall Street Journal. And, it just is, it's surprising because when you really get into it and you look at it, I mean, sure, at best, you do see some tiny bits of spending, but again, they're pulling back spending based on, already inflated numbers from COVID, which again, I think this is the third or fourth time we're mentioning it, from a government that has grown 40% in 3 years.
Yeah.
And so,
again, Democrats are saying there should be no debt limit. That's the new thing. Why do we even have these debates? And, and AOC said, I don't know anybody who doesn't want to get more from the government. Well, I don't want to get more from the government. Stop it. Stop it. Because you're spending us into absolute oblivion. You're destroying the economy. You're destroying our money. You're destroying our paychecks.
The government doesn't.
Go ahead.
The government doesn't create anything. It takes.
It does.
And, you and I have discussed this before, how the Democrats will talk about revenue. You got to get more revenue. You got to get more revenue. And I don't know why. I heard someone say it this week, one Democrat. I don't know why Republicans are afraid of revenue, because revenue is taxes, and taxes come from me. They come from you. They come from whoever's watching, right? And so in order for them to kind of make money or break even, you've got to, either increase taxes, revenue, or lower taxes.
Right.
I mean, that you've got to raise or lower, or you could, which is not something they really want to do in DC or in any government, local, state. They don't seem to want to cut spending. Right. They're living on someone else's.
You said they don't seem to. You said they don't seem to want to cut spending. They never cut spending. That's the point. They never do cut spending. Once government grows, then they actually build into it's called baseline budgeting. They build an inflationary increase into it. And then if they reduce that inflationary increase by that much, they call it a cut when actually it was an increase. So they never cut spending. In fact, you know people work in the government, and they get to the end of the budget year, they have to spend their budget. For God forbid they don't spend their budget, they might not get it again the next year.
Right.
So that's the whole nature of government is to spend. Now, Brian, we promised that we would explain what Buzz Lightyear has to say to this debate. And I think he has something very prescient to say. He kind of typifies and pictures what's happening right now. Let's watch this little clip from Buzz Lightyear.
To infinity and beyond.
Well, there it is. And what I love about that, Brian, is there you've got Buzz Lightyear who thinks he can fly, right?
Right.
He actually thinks he can fly. And
Right.
he's going to prove to everybody that he can fly. And he jumps off the cliff and bounces around, boink, boink, total chaos. All the other toys are like, what is happening? This is chaos. This is insanity. And then he manages to land on his feet. He still thinks at the end of the time that he can fly. And that's like McCarthy to infinity and beyond, when actually he's taking the debt to infinity and beyond. He thinks he just flew off and made this incredible leap forward when actually he's a clown show, Brian.
Yeah.
He's a clown show, and he doesn't know it. All of them, all 149 Republicans are clown shows, don't even know that they're the clown show.
Well, and then, Woody, is the one who kind of breaks it to him and says, that's not flying. That's falling with style, And then, of course, at the end of the movie, in the big climactic scene of the first Toy Story, Buzz actually admits that. That wasn't flying. It was falling with style. And I'm like, well, that's where we are. We're not falling off a cliff. We're not flying off it.
We haven't quite gotten to the admission part, Brian, of where they realize that they're falling. But it's a great metaphor. It's not flying. You're not doing anything great. You are failing.
And that's where
you said flailing. Isn't that what you were?
Flailing with guile instead of falling with style. Yeah, that was. I tried to make a little rhyme.
It's really where we are in this country and what's happening right now. And it's why we're encouraging you to take action, to go to Grassfire, check your email, and send some faxes, and then engage, call Congress, call your senators today and tomorrow. Let them hear from you. Let them know what you think about a 40% increase in government and how they've eliminated, or they're going to eliminate, the debt ceiling altogether for a couple of years conveniently through the next presidential election, because they don't want to deal with it in 2024. They don't want to face this issue. They all want to run and hide. And so tell them what you think. We can scream all we want. We need tens and hundreds of thousands of people to take action, let their voices be heard. And one more thing, we really could use your help at Grassfire. Become a VIP. Stand with us. There's lots of ways you can help. If it's just $15 a month, you'll be able to send the faxes at 80% discount. We do our morning VIP news briefs. You'll be the first to get those. I think it's the best compilation of the news that you can get actually anywhere in the internet. You can unlimited faxes to your members of Congress. We have this impact portal, a lot of benefits. The most important thing is Grassfire is an independent voice. One of the few truly independent voices. We're not beholden to anybody in D.C. They don't like us much. Either side of the aisle. They don't like us much at all, Brian, but we keep fighting the battle because we are a voice. We report truth so citizens across this country can take action.
Well, like millions of Americans, every day we go out and we push that boulder up the hill. And someday we hope to reach the summit, and if you're okay with the government spending to infinity and beyond, then, you don't have to do anything, then you just, kind of turn us off and, be happy that, they're taking a path that you're satisfied with. But from the people that are part of our tribe, our group, our nation as Grassfire Nation, we're trying to give you a voice. We're trying to empower you to make your voice heard. That's our goal. We can't claim to influence policy. We have some contacts in DC. We get good information from. We have some good relationships with people, and it's very helpful. But that's not our thing. Is not to be storming offices in the Capitol and telling people, hey, we have to have this meeting with this senator or that representative. No, we want to give you a voice through petitions, through fax fires, through phone calls. Because if you look at today's update that we sent out this morning and then resent to let you know that we're going to be broadcasting live right now, we have included Mitch McConnell's phone number and the White House switchboard and the Capitol switchboard. So you can call the White House, call the Senate minority leader, call your senators and tell them what you think. And if you want to get right into their office, send a fax. You'll hit, for $30, you'll reach up to 40 senators. For $50, you'll reach up to 85. 85% of the senators, that's pretty good. Yeah,
And
that's
you
pretty
can
good number.
customize your message. We have sample copy there, but you can customize, write it as you want. Let them hear your voice. That would even be best. That's the best of all. But anyways, Thank you so much. And we encourage you again, take action. Go to grassfire.com. Stand with us. Stand with America. Stand for America against this dirty debt deal that's taking us over a cliff to infinity and beyond. For Grassfire, this is Steve Elliott and Brian Connor. Have a great day.